All right, we're excited to be here today with Mr. Craig Colten, who is on the 2013 Local Arrangement Committee. Craig, thanks so much for being here. Also a professor in the geography department at Louisiana State University in Baton Rouge. How excited are you that the AHA is actually in New Orleans this year? Hasn't been since, what, 72, since you all been here?
It's really great. I think it's great they're here. Louisiana and New Orleans love to host these organizations, and this is really a great city for historical organizations. It's a city so rich in its history. It's just an ideal location.
And let's talk about some of the things that you all have planned for all the people at this convention as far as tours go. What are you all doing?
One of the things we try to do with the tours is highlight several of the things that make New Orleans really distinctive and really unique. And yesterday we had Rich Campanella from Tulane University lead a full-day tour, and the focus was really on the long-term historical geography of the city, how the city evolved in this place, a very inopportune place for a city, and how that evolved over time. And really also looking at New Orleans before Katrina and New Orleans after Katrina to really see how the city has rebounded, and that's been a big topic of interest over the years. We also wanted to do some tours that reflected some of the classic things that people think about when they think about New Orleans. We have a tour to the Food and Drink Museum. We have a tour to a jazz tour where they're going to all these famous jazz sites. And then we're having some tours go to the cemeteries, and these are all things that are really just classic New Orleans features. Then we're also having some tours to introduce the historians to some of the great resources here in New Orleans. The Louisiana State Museum hosted a tour last night. The Historic New Orleans Collection is introducing people to their museums and their historic collections. And we took a group also to the Notarial Archives, which is this very rare, distinctive collection that houses these magnificent 19th century watercolors of all the houses that were in the city at the time. And it's a phenomenal resource for historic preservation and historical architecture studies.
Wow, so much for people to see and do here in your profession. Let's talk about the theme, lives, places, and stories, this year's theme, its meaning, and also how it relates to the city of New Orleans.
I think this was it was a very simple theme, so it really works, but it really works well here because stories. I mean, this is a city rich in stories from the founding of the city. They had to create a story, almost create a myth to convince people to come here. We've had to create new myths and stories since Hurricane Katrina, the resiliency story. And then all along the way, when the Union soldiers occupied the city, they tried to convince them this was a dangerous place and they're all going to die, so that the Union soldiers would leave them alone. So New Orleans is a story that's rich in these histories and then places, and that's really where I come as a geographer. We talk about places, and this place is so distinctive with its local environmental history, and there's been a number of works written recently on the environmental history of New Orleans, how New Orleans fits into this place on the river, why this place is important, and how it shaped the city's history. And then lies, of course, there are magnificent characters in the city, from Andrew Jackson to the current mayor. Many of them are bigger than life sort of people, and they are emblematic of characters and lives we see in other cities, but they make what this place distinctive.
And as a local, I'm Baton Rouge, but we can still consider you a local here in New Orleans. Yeah. What do you really hope that people take away from this year's conference?
Well, certainly we hope they come and hear some great papers and interact with their colleagues. But beyond that, I hope they come and taste a little of the rich cuisine we have here. Mm-hmm. I hope they get out and wander the streets a little bit and see the French Quarter and look at what's going on in terms of historic preservation and the tourism landscapes, but also get beyond this and maybe get out to look at the levees and look at the river and look at some of the neighborhoods that were devastated by Hurricane Katrina and really see how the city is rebounding. And one of the most dramatic things I've seen in the last couple of years was there was this house that had a bronze plaque on it with the markings that they painted on houses. They spray painted on houses afterwards, but it's now someone is historically marking that event, and they say it was to show that they were survivors, that they rode out the storm and came back. And it was, I hope they can see little things like that they can take away and remember that New Orleans is still here, and it's a city that wants to be here for several more centuries.
Absolutely. I have several friends that have done that. They've saved in some way, shape, or form. They've saved the X that was marked on their house. Well, I know the best thing that people can do, of course, we want them to come back. If you ways to help New Orleans continue to recover, come back and visit New Orleans again, because we want people to come here and help invest in our local economy.
And I think too, what's really remarkable, what I've seen the last 7.5 years since Katrina, is that there has been this tremendous outpouring of volunteer effort. So many people have come in and lent a hand, and now the big conferences are trying to come here and include New Orleans on their schedule. So there is a great deal of national empathy towards New Orleans, and it's wonderful for us to see.
And of course, we got the Super Bowl coming up in a few weeks. Mr. Craig Colten, thank you so much, and have a great time showing people around our great city. We appreciate your time this morning.
Thank you. It's been a pleasure.